morning we're going to Bulgaria. This may end up being a small series, expect it will be, of Bulgaria, or at least Sofia. And at the moment this is just the Tatras as you leave Poland and come into Slovakia. I don't know how well you can see that. The window's a bit not too brilliant. It's quite nice and mountainous out there. These are the hills that have basically kept the Poles a separate nation from the Slovaks and vice versa over the centuries. If there weren't hills around between Czech Republic and Slovakia and Poland, there might have been just simply one nation, but it's also linked in with which bits went under Austria and which bits went under Hungary and which bits didn't go anywhere, etc. Or, you know, which bits were under the Holy Roman Empire and which weren't. So, but if you go back far enough, you see that mountains usually explain a lot about linguistic history. So, but these aren't anywhere near Bulgaria yet. Well, it's now about an hour later. In the meantime, we've had flat land down there, but it's mountains again. So they must already be the Balkans. And so it won't be long before we're landing in Sofia. Well, that's my first look at Sofia. So that's like kind of Central Park structure over there.
Yeah.
The mountains over there in the distance.
Yeah, yes. Okay.
So now we're just going from the terminal here of the airport here in Sofia to the centre. According to there's a lot of these yellow OK taxis. Now I was advised to take this company and that they had meters etc and that they would be okay. So if you don't know any different, then maybe coming here follow the same advice. Certainly there are the same thing as unfortunately we have in Warsaw. People trying to get your attention, take you off to some unofficial taxi. I've just ignored them and walked. Obviously my Bulgarian's only a question of 20 or 30 words, so but it's very close to Russian, you see, so it's like a mix of Russian and Serbo-Croat, which I also learned for quite well at one time, and with quite a few size does matter, it says up there, Razmer Maznachen. So certainly using Russian is a better thing than to use English, because the Russians are slightly more likely to get a bit of respect around here than most of the other foreigners. Russians are basically considered to be quite tough cookies, so you're less likely to get mucked about with if you speak back to them in Russian than if you speak to them in English. Also, they don't really have that hatred of the Russians that seems to be in a lot of the former Eastern Bloc, because of course they were always Orthodox brothers with the Russians, and in fact some people in the Soviet Union used to say that they were the best allies that they had out here. They called them the 17th state sometimes. Certainly times when I've worked in Russia, there's been Bulgarians on board as well, and they've pretty much felt at home in Moscow, so and of course, as you know, it's a Cyrillic alphabet, one of the closest Cyrillic alphabets to Russian. There are fewer differences in the use of Cyrillics between Bulgarian and Russian than there are between Belarusian or Ukrainian and Russian, and certainly between the other Cyrillics using languages of Central Europe. So the link Bulgaria-Russia is still quite visible, but it doesn't feel much like Russia. It feels more like, well, it feels more like Southern Europe. It feels like, you know, not dissimilar to places like, well, Cyprus really. It's got a kind of, or even Turkey, you know. It's got a kind of, that kind of a feel about it. If you disregard the frequent Cyrillics, and there's a lot of non-Cyrillics written up. I've noticed that in Kiev as well, the amount that was written not in Cyrillics, even though the Ukraine has a Cyrillic alphabet. Now I've seen these cars with C on for Sofia over in Poland. The Bulgarians sometimes drive up as far as Poland, and well, they'll drive all over Europe, you know, and this being the European Union, you know, that's no problem, why not? But basically, there is a kind of not a surprise to see the cars and the way the cars' registrations look. They kind of look familiar. There was a time when in Poland you'd see quite a lot of them around on the street, and usually up to no good. because the Bulgarian mafia were trafficking women around the various well, high roads and hedgerows of Poland, basically. Doesn't happen so much these days, although it's certainly not over and done with. At one time it was much more common than it became after we all joined the union and tried to clean up our acts. This is my first ever visit to Bulgaria, so I'm quite excited.